True crimers, welcome to Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. Listen, I wanted to get on. I know this is a little last minute and impromptu, but I tell you what, today I was, and many of you may have read the most recent communication from 163214, Brian Koberger, uh, reaching out to the assistant warden regarding his accommodations at the Idaho Maximum Security Penitentiary. Now, I want to read this verbatim. It's extremely hard to read, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Some people don't even think it's his writing. That is inaccurate. It's his writing, and I am glad to put up other examples of his writing. Listen, he writes like a fourth grader. That's just the facts of the matter. And actually, let me get this up on the stage so you all can read along with this with me here as well. But essentially, it's Brian C. Koberger. He usually does use his middle initial. He cites his number 163214. This was actually dated 7/30/2025, and he says to the ward, Deputy Warden Dietz, he says, as I continue the SPI phase, so this is the phase where they're determining what block he's going to be in, I wish to discuss if I may be transferred to other SEG, AC SEG setting. He specifically asked for B block. Not engaging in any of the recent, it's very difficult to read, but it looks like he says forwarding or striking. It's very difficult to read, as well as being subject of, he transposes that, verbal threats and harassment. He basically says that, and I'm trying to read this verbatim, but his writing is so deplorable, in that other bases, 2 or J block is an environment. B block, immediately, I wish to speak with you soon. So obviously, this is some of our first communication we've been ever able to read from him. I wanted to put up for those individuals, there were several individuals, which this was really odd, saying that they didn't even think this was his writing. But I assure you, this is his writing. Here's his signature on his plea papers. And then I have several other papers. But the long of the short of it is, this is him. This is Brian Koberger. I'm going to put this back up. You can see the date of this was when he was originally transferred. And I was so irritated, and I'm sure many of you were, to see this. You know, just the fact that he would be complaining about his situation, asking to be in B block, it appears. He doesn't want to be in J block, talking about harassment. It's actually, you see inmates do this. I'm not going to say you don't see this. This is usual. Inmates complain and are always looking for a better situation and to be transferred, and that they have issues with people. So this isn't completely out of line with what we see. But for a quadruple murderer to think he has any chance at controlling this warden, at controlling his arrangements, it's really something else. You know, this isn't a motel room that he's in. This isn't Shangri-La. This isn't the Ritz-Carlton, or even the Motel 6. This is a prison, a high-risk security prison, and he is in lockup in SEG. And you know, in the comment section, I put Delphi in here because I am still so irritated with the Delphi case, and where I'm actually going to have a homicide detective of 40 years on with me next week, and we're going to discuss Delphi. and that horrible investigation that was done. But nevertheless, the fact that Richard Allen was in this type of a setting without being convicted, and we've talked about it over and over again, um, and he had legitimate complaint. Brian Koberger has absolutely no room to complain. I'm sure all of you are as incensed about this as anyone. I can only imagine what Mr. Gonzalez, the Gonzalez family, really all the families must be thinking when they see a letter written like this. For another media outlet, a written media outlet, numerous ones. Actually, I've talked about his writing before, not from the standpoint of a writing exemplar, but the standpoint of what does this mean, this messy writing. And just in my opinion, from other individuals I've dealt with that are criminals, they don't care. They don't care what anybody thinks about them, what anybody thinks about their writing. A lot of people, the only time they ever see anything of you is your writing. And I'm not talking about, signing your IRS tax return. I'm talking about when you are writing to make a point, or you are writing to ask a question, when you are writing to be transferred from a particular unit or transferred into a particular unit, when you're writing something that you care about. For this type of horrible writing that we're seeing here, just in my opinion, is somebody who really doesn't give a flip of how they're perceived, because some people are never seen in any other way other than their writing. That's changing a lot with computers and things, but certainly that is something in school, in college, and certainly in the work environment, something that when you needed to communicate, you needed to have clear and concise writing when it was something you cared about. That, in a sense, is just my opinion. If you look at other serial killers, and I've looked at many of their handwriting, some of them had beautiful handwriting. If you look at Ted Bundy, just beautiful handwriting, and others, the Zodiac killer, very clear handwriting, not beautiful like Ted Bundy's, but very clear. When you look at Danny Rowling, and I want to segue into that, there's been a lot coming out about Danny Rowling. Danny Rowling was the Gainesville Ripper. That was his nickname. He killed 5 in Gainesville. He admitted to killing 8 in total. He was sentenced to death. But essentially, he prowled also college campuses. He killed at the junior college, which is called Santa Fe, over near the University of Florida. He prowled. I'm sorry, Florida State. I'm sorry, University of Florida. He prowled. Bundy was Florida State. Rawling was the University of Florida, the Gators, which is over in Gainesville. And that's also where Santa Fe, which is a junior college that fed into the University of Florida, that's where he chose to seek his victims and to look for his prey. And we're learning from the digital experts that went through and looked at Brian Koberger, 613214, looked at his digital footprint. Even though so much is gone, they were able to see some of the searches he did. Now, he searched about 20 different serial killers. And one might say, well, geez, he was a PhD in criminal justice. Of course, he's going to be looking at different serial killers. Well, to a degree. But this was on Christmas Day, and one he did, I believe, a week after the killings. And again, so much of his footprint is erased. But if you look at Danny Rowling, he also used a K-bar knife. And I think this is really significant. The reason Brian Koberger was studying these people was very simple. He was studying them to specifically line out how to do a crime and learn it from hindsight. When I teach my classes on self-defense and how basically not to be a victim of people like 214, what do I teach? I actually go through the different killers that have taken depending on if I'm teaching high schoolers or if I'm teaching college people or if I'm teaching adults, how were they victimized? What happened that led that killer to be able to victimize them? And specifically go through the details of the crime, and what could have possibly be done differently, not to victim shame in any way, but to learn from that and to teach other people, listen, don't do that. I'll give you a perfect example. When I talk about Dennis Rader, who was the bind, torture, and kill, and I hate to even call him that because he named himself. And you just can't give yourself a nickname. And that's what he did because he thought he was so great and wanted to remember for that. But Dennis Rader, he actually spied and surveilled his victims. He made sure he, for the most part, understood their routines, when they got home, when they left. So one of the lessons we can learn from Dennis Rader is to change up your routine, to not leave at the same time. If you do leave from the same time, leave from different areas, drive a little bit of a different route. Turn on different lights when you get home so everybody doesn't know you're home. Keep lights on. What I do at my house, my lights are always on. Not all of them, but they're always on to a degree. You can't really tell when we're here, when we're not here. Obviously, an alarm system, all of that is critical, locking all your doors. But back to the specific thing I teach about Dennis Rader is his proclivity to really watch and study his victims and understand patterns. Well, if you change up patterns, that will confuse somebody that may be targeting you as a victim. I just wanted to give that one example. But that was what that is what 214 was doing in reverse. He was looking at how can I commit this crime by learning from the ways all of these other killers committed the crimes. What did they do wrong? What did they do right? What worked for them? And to me, that's why he was looking so closely at people like Danny Rowling, who was actually victimizing the same type of people that 214 wanted to victimize. And same with, in terms of what his motive was, most like, in my opinion, like Ted Bundy. Was he an incel? Meaning 214. I 100% believe that. But I don't think that his drive was only in part from that, being the incel, being turned away and everything. He had a ravenous, in my opinion, craze to harm and to torture and to annihilate women. So nevertheless, not to digress, I just wanted to get on and really talk about the type of inmate this person would be, to think that he actually deserves to be able to decide where he's going to be in an institution. I think he's probably working hard, thinking, maybe if I can get their attention, I wonder if I can get back to, say, Pennsylvania. So his mother will be closer and could visit more easy, or something like that. I certainly hope that he never has any power in this regard. He has had so much power throughout this case, even up to his plea, not having to give any details about his crime, not having to say where the knife is, all of that. And of course, avoiding the firing squad, which was his number one goal. So he has had way too much power. The fact that he's sniveling about people yelling things or harassing him through the vents, mind you. It's not even cell to cell. It's not even face to face, through the vents. That's what happens in jails and in prisons. It happens in jails too. I wanted to mention this because for those of you who fortunately have never had to go into a jail or never had to go into a prison, I just wanted to describe this a little bit for you. First of all, in my opinion, it's a cross between urine, bleach, and body odor. That's when I walked in to conduct interviews at these facilities. There's a smell certainly even more pungent, in my opinion, in jails, and certainly also existed in prisons. And it's because of all the body odor in there, uh, the urine, the you know the plumbing that isn't the best, the food smells. It's just gross. So there is a particular pungent smell in in prisons and in jails. Uh, Also, there is noise. It is unbelievable how much noise there is. If for those of you who have ever watched Silence of the Lambs, by the way, one of my favorite movies, a guy in my class was in that movie. Before he was an FBI agent, he was a physical fitness instructor. And that's when Jodie Foster came just a couple of classes before me. And he was in that movie, Mr. Bonnie. He was my physical fitness instructor. He was in that movie, or I should say, supervisor, physical fitness supervisor. It was the person underneath him who was my direct physical fitness instructor. And Mr. Stowe, who handed Clarice her credentials, handed me my credentials. So my point is that if you watch the scene where Clarice goes and visits Hannibal Lecter, that is the noise. It's noisy. I'm not saying it looks like that in terms of dirtiness or, that dungeon type situation. It's much more sterile than that. But that is the sort of noise, the clanking, the constant talking, and it's just pervasive. And so this is just a part of it, and that is never going to end. And for 214, he better get used to it, because this is just the beginning. And that is why when you look at the Delphi case, and Richard Allen, you just, anybody in law enforcement, anybody with common sense, anybody who tracked that case, it was so very wrong. Now, some of you might be saying, listen, he was convicted of killing those two little girls. I still shake my head about that, because I still have a lot of questions about that. But my point is, no matter what, it is an injustice to put somebody pre-conviction into a maximum security segregated situation, and they can go bonkers. We know Richard Allen did. We've seen pictures, we've seen the reports, we've seen the court documents. We know he was medicated. They had to actually inject him, all of that. He lost it in there. And I would say 214, judging from what he's writing here, I mean, he had barely begun. Look at that, July 30th. So in my opinion, he's going to have a long haul. And, I'm glad. I'm glad it's going to be difficult for him, because I didn't think it was going to be as difficult as we're hearing it is for him. And I hope it just gets worse. And I'm just being frank and honest. I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything else. I wanted to say one other quick thing, and this is not about 214 or the Idaho 4 case. This is about Emmanuel Haro, and just my prayers go out. I fear, of course, Emmanuel Haro is missing right now. He's a 7-month-old baby. He was reported about 6 days ago missing in California. His mother, for those of you who don't know, gave the worst statement. It needs to be in Quantico and used as, this is a liar statement. There was nothing she said that made any sense. She said she was changing a diaper at a Big Five type strip mall parking lot, and that she was attacked, and of course has no scratches, no bruising, other than the black eye that seems to be healing. That's in my opinion. And just no tears, just speaking in past tense, not logically putting together the story, which is what people who are telling the truth did. They will chronologically give their events rather than her, which was a shotgun approach to just making it up as she went. Obviously, law enforcement is completely, I believe, all over that case. They believe the parents are involved and hurt baby Emmanuel. I don't know if they'll ever find him. I think we don't even know when the last time he's been seen. It's a little bit of a Harmony Montgomery case, but I just wanted to say my prayers go out to, um, that those that did love Emmanuel, and all of those in law enforcement that are working to find him, because I'm telling you, they are working long, long hours, and it's very important that they find him and that the people responsible for him no longer being here. That's my opinion. They haven't found him. Last I knew, I looked right before I came on. It's my opinion that he likely won't be found alive. Um, but I just wanted to say my prayers to him. I'm thinking about Emmanuel Haro. And anyway, I'm glad you guys could join me. I know this is super last minute. I was just so irritated when I read this note, irritated that 214, it's so hard not to say his name, I want to say. Um, it's really unimaginable that a guy like this thinks he deserves special treatment, thinks he deserves to decide what cell he's going to be in. It's really sick. And I hope all of us continue to support the victim families and continue to hopefully keep what happened in the news, because I always worry. Menendez tomorrow, Eric Menendez goes before the parole board. Friday, Lyle Menendez goes before the parole board. Remember, they shot their parents. They shot Kitty, I believe, 10 times. They shot Jose 6 times. They reloaded. They used the money and spent extravagantly. Once they left, they made up the whole story on the 911 call about finding their parents. It was all a lie, a huge acting job. Once the police arrived, the same kind of acting job you see with them on the stand. Never any mention of being sexually abused until Abramson came and became their lawyer, which was their second attorney. And, this story cropped up. Anyway, so many people forget the violence involved in these cases. When you look at the Charles Manson cases and Leslie Van Houten, who stabbed Mrs. LaBianca Roseanne 16 times, I believe, with her hand, with a knife. And she is out right now. I kind of teased, pruning tulips, because it's not necessarily about will they get out and never reoffend. I think that's something to certainly consider. And that's what the parole board does consider in part. But it's also about just the punishment. When you viciously murder somebody, Sharon Tate was 9 months pregnant and they stabbed her to death. All the people, and everybody's forgotten about the Manson murders seemingly, because all these people are being recommended for parole, and one has gotten out. I'm waiting to see about the second one, and everybody forgets it. And that's what I've said about Brian, 214, is that in years to come, I'll probably be dead. The Gonzalez family and the other family members may or may not be alive, meaning the parents. But people will forget. Believe me, they do. And we're seeing it right now with Menendez. We're seeing it with the big push on Scott Peterson. And of course, the Manson killers. And I just hope everybody keeps the truth out there about what this monster did. Also around the corner, don't forget, September 3rd is the deadline for learning whether he is going to push to, try to file an appeal. He can. And it'll be interesting to see if he makes that decision, because if he makes that decision, obviously it affects the plea, and it could also affect what he has to say about his attorney, Ann Taylor. because that's really the end for being able to have a successful uh, uh, and a successful situation where he could get out of his plea agreement. He would have to literally say his Sixth Amendment rights were violated and say all these terrible things about Ann Taylor. I don't think it's going to work, but it's on the table. So everyone, I know it's last minute. I know it's late at night. I'm getting ready to cook dinner for the family, but I just had to come on and talk to you all about this. Everybody, I hope you have a great night. To the mods, thanks for being on. I can't wait to read everybody's comments. And until next time, may justice be served.